Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. As a Husqvarna Automower installer and dealer mechanic, I often get asked the question, what do I have to do to my mower to store it for the winter? So let's take a look at that. We'll go find my mower, Moby Dick. He's hiding around the back side of the garage. The very first thing you want to do is make sure that the battery's charged. So if we take a look at the menu, get a close look down here, you can see that the battery symbol shows a full charge. And it's important to look at that, especially in this colder weather, because the newer firmware on some of these machines, or probably all the machines now, only allow charging below certain hot temperatures and above certain cold temperatures. I don't remember what that range is, but if it's been below freezing for a week, it probably was never charging. So we're going to just move him out of the way for right now. Take a look at the charging pad. First thing you want to know is not to stand on here. There are some wires inside there that you can break, and you don't want to crack the plastic when it's really cold. Some of you might notice that I got a blue flashing light. Yes, I do have a broken wire. I was rutting around in the yard the other day, so I am aware of that. So on the back here we have our area right and our area left, and our guide wires and our power wire from our transformer. So I usually leave enough wire on these that I can, maybe every other year, just cut this connector off and put a new one on in the spring. So I'm not going to do anything to these wires to protect them this winter. Now if you want to grease these, that's great. I would warn that if you put them in a plastic bag, you might end up with moisture buildup in there. So just be careful about how you store the ends of these wires. I've seen guys grease them and then just tape them up real tight, or like I'm going to do, cut the ends. The transformer wire here, what is that? Spider or a tick? Transformer wire I'm going to pull out, and I'll bring the transformer in the house. Just know that you can't leave this sitting here all winter long and expect there not to be corrosion inside here in the spring. Well, the next thing we want to do is pull all these screws out, and then we'll bring the pad into the garage and clean it up. Alright, now I have my mower and my charging pad inside the garage. We're going to want to clean this up, get rid of all this dust and dirt. I'll come back through and I'll wash this clean before I store it. But there's some things I want you to look at here on your charging pad. First one is what's going on back here. Let me get some more light on this. So you can see that I've got a lot of debris and cobwebs and something growing in a cocoon in there or something, whatever. That's all got to be cleaned out. We don't want to store it like that. But when I'm standing here looking, I can see in the back there that there's a spring out of place. So let's take a closer look at that. Alright, so these are the contact strips right here that line up with the front of the machine. Right here. We're going to want to make sure those are clean. We can take some emery paper to these and just polish them a little bit. And we can do the same thing on these strips. You know, we could take some, if they're corroded or looking bad, we could take some emery paper and clean these up, okay? But you notice how this spring right here, there you go. You should be able to see that spring now. We'll look on the other side. This side's all jacked up. That spring isn't in there the way it's supposed to be. It was probably still working, but that's something I'm going to have to fix. That's something you want to look for, is that these springs are in place. And the other thing you want to look at is these wires. I've seen these wires, when they get really hot, the insulation will burn off, and that usually happens when the connection between here and here is loose. So you want to check that. See, I can actually move that, but it's not too terribly loose. So you want to tighten that up. Make sure you're all good to go on your connections. Your springs are good, your contacts are clean. You get all the spiders and bugs out of there. Wash the pad. The bottom side will probably be all full of dirt or mud. I wiped this one down before I brought it in. And that's about all you really need to do on the charging pad. The next thing we're going to look at is the mower itself. And we want to make sure, we'll double check that the battery is fully charged. So if you're not aware, there is a battery symbol right here, and it's showing me that it's fully charged. Don't necessarily trust your phone app on this one. Just double check and make sure that the battery's charged up. If you store it almost dead and it drains off during the winter below a point where the charger can recover the battery, or in this case 2 batteries, then you're done. You're hundreds of dollars into new batteries for a 450X. We don't want that. So we're going to shut the machine off. And when I'm talking about the 450, 430, 315 series, they're going to have a switch right underneath here. Right there is our power switch. We're going to turn that off. Okay, now that we got the mower up on the bench, the first thing we want to do is just take a visual surveillance of the machine and see if it's all intact. We got our sensors in front here. Everything looks good. I got some crap jammed in the headlight here. We'll have to clean that out. Some sticks or something. But what you want to concern yourself with right now is the underside. So on the underside here, we have the wires from the top cover passing through the bottom of the shell. We want to inspect these grommets and make sure everything is seated properly, the grommets are intact, it all looks good. Once we've determined that there's nothing wrong with the grommets, none of the wires are damaged, we can pop these grommets out, and you just kind of roll them back and they'll unseat. There's a groove here that the grommet sets in the case of the shell. We pull all the wires out. Some of them are easier to come out than others. This one's being a pain in the butt. I wonder why. There we go. This one's our main power wire. When you pull this one out, I want you to look at the sides of this connector. If there's been a problem with corrosion or high resistance and heat buildup, you're going to see some bubbling on here. If you do see that bubbling, odds are you're not going to be able to pull this connector apart. This one comes apart just fine. The connections look clean in there. We're all good to go. We'll pop the rest of these apart. This one may or may not have a couple extra wires because I added taillights to the back of it. So I'm looking at the wheels. Everything feels intact. Bearings aren't out. You know, there's no slop in it. They turn free. This is not our cutting disc. This is a let's call it a skid plate. But there's a bearing on here, and we just want to make sure that that spins freely. Your blades down here are on this cutting disc. Because this moves up and down to change your cutting height adjustment, there's a rubber bellows between the body and this cutting disc. And you're going to want to go through and inspect that bellows for any cuts or cracks. it's easiest to do if you had set the cutting height all the way to the lowest setting first. I didn't do that. So I'll just come through with my flashlight and I'll take a look at this and make sure that it looks like it's all intact and no cuts or rips. Once we get to this point here, we can set the machine back on its wheels, and then we're going to pop the cover off. If you've never done this before, I'm going to get it off of here and then I'll show you what's going on. And then it'll be more self-explanatory. There's 4 joysticks under this cover. Those joysticks are for the machine to determine when it's bumped into an object or when it's being lifted. So this is kind of hard to do when the machine is so high. There we go. So we can lift the cover up now, and because we disconnected the wires, it'll come right off. So we're going to look through here and make sure that we have 4 decent looking grommets that sit on top of these joysticks, and we know they were in good shape because it was so hard to pop this off of here. We'll take a look at this piece right here. This is where the charging strips attach, and just take a visual and make sure there's no burn marks on there. Otherwise, brush it off, clean it up a little bit, and you're good to go. Now, the next step is going to be to clean this. You see Moby, he's kind of dirty. He hasn't been maintained very well. There's a lot of crap under here, and this is not unusual. Your mower is going to look the same way after a month or 6 weeks. You know, all these clippings build up. So the best way to do this, it's not with a garden hose, but it's with compressed air usually. If you don't have compressed air, then we can probably try using a soft brush like this and just come through and clean it all up. Or a combination of a soft brush and a blower. And I got a blower around here somewhere. I don't recommend doing this in your garage, but I don't want to start videoing outside either. You can see how I could go through this whole machine and clean it up real nice. And that's what I'm going to do right now. Alright, so we've taken a brush and we've cleaned the whole top of the mower. Used a little bit of air to help clean it up, but we did not use a garden hose. And in a little bit here I'll show you why. So we have our cover for our keypad. In front of that there's this little cover right here, and underneath that is a filter that vents the case of the machine. So if we take a wide bladed screwdriver and we drop it in between this, the crack between this cover and this cover, just give it a little twist, we can pop that plate right off of there. Alright? Now you want to be careful because you can easily crack this cover, and I did crack this one. This is not in the owner's manual as far as regular maintenance, but I want to show you what's going on here so you have a better understanding of why you don't want to wash this machine with the cover off. I know I've already had people come in and say, well, it can run outside in the rain, why can't I wash it like this? Well, there is a hole right here. Take a look right there on the side. Maybe that'd be a little bit better. All right. So if we pop this this little cover off the top here, you know, I don't have a problem with people using power tools to take these things apart. Just don't use power tools to put them back together. So I got these 3 screws out on this 450X. I'm going to lift this plate straight up. All right, there was a little bit of spring tension on it. The spring was pushing on there. But if you look, there is this white filter right here, and that is a direct vent into the case. Well, what I want to show you is that there's a direct passage from this hole into this chamber right here. So if you can see that, this wire is passing through. So if you're washing this thing with a garden hose and you start flooding water in here, it's going to flood this chamber and it's going to get down through this filter and you're going to end up with moisture inside your machine. And we don't want that. I should point out that every 3 years Husky recommends changing this filter. It just comes as a little decal kind of thing. There's adhesive around the outer edge of it. You peel this one off, you stick this one on, blammo, you're done. Once that's done, we're going to put this cover back on. There's some pillars here and there's some holes here on the cover. You just line that up. And if you can't get it lined up because the spring is fighting you, you can lift this cover up and take some of that spring tension off. Then get things lined up. Sometimes it even helps to open that just to get it to drop down in place. And then we're going to use, well, what are we going to use? Somewhere around here is my T20. Right here on the floor where I usually store it. We're going to use our T20 to turn these screws down, not the power tool. And the recommended torque value on these is 1.6 Newton meters. And we all know how much that is, right? Hell no. 2 fingers, little twist, no more. It's way less than 1 ugga-dugga, so don't even think about torquing on these things. Just strip the plastic. Once you got that secure, you can take your cover. It just slides up into place. Give it a little tap, snaps right in. Cleaning, checking these bellows for cracks. Make sure there's no tears or any rips in this bellows. That would let debris into the machine. That's about all you can do as a homeowner with a machine that's under warranty. I would suggest though that just for giggles, you go through and make sure none of these screws are loose. I'm not asking you to tighten anything. Just put a little pressure on them and see if they're going to want to turn. Don't try and turn them any farther. If you do have a loose one, snug it up, good to go. Earlier, when we took this apart and pulled the plugs out of these wires, that would have been a good time to just kind of tip the machine and see if any moisture came out. If it does, it's not good. You want to take the machine into your dealer. But it's worth looking at. So let's put the cover back on. We have our wires here that we unplugged from underneath, and we just want to hold them in front of the machine when we drop the cover on here. Now, getting those 4 joysticks to line up with the cover is way easier than you'd think. We were looking at this gap here. So if you see there's no gap, and back here I got a huge gap, we just want to set this cover on here so that we can see an even gap all the way around. And once we have that, that cover is just going to pop right into place. Now that we got the cover in place, we're we're going to want to connect these wires. So I'm just going to do one here for you. We want to be careful, first of all, when we're messing with these, so we don't accidentally push them inside the case and lose them. If that happens, then you're going to have to split the case. And if you split the case, you're going to break the warranty seal, and that could lead to a whole bunch of problems. So I've snapped it together. It's latched tight. I'll push the connector into the hole and the wire into the hole. Now I want to make sure that this rubber grommet with this groove right here is sealed into this hole, the case. So I just kind of work the one edge of the grommet into the case, and I keep working around until I think I've got the whole thing pushed in there. And once I think I have it, I always try and twist it like this, left and right, and make sure that it feels like it's in that groove. Even pull on it a little bit and see if an edge comes up. It's important to keep the moisture out of here, and you can't guarantee that seal unless you take these steps and actually make sure that it's connected properly. You can also take a look back here on this side. This is the port that we use when we connect it to a computer. And you know, there's a seal on there. Make sure this feels nice and snug when you tighten it up. So we got our machine cleaned. You know, I didn't talk about changing the blades on here. That's something pretty basic that most Automower owners probably already know. And you know, if you had the thing running at all in your yard, you probably change the blades at least once. So we didn't cover that. So that pretty much covers what the homeowner can do to their Automower for winter storage without running into any warranty issues. You want to get him out of the elements, store him inside for the winter, and maybe, you know, bring him a fresh bowl of clippings to nibble on every now and then. You know, you don't want him to starve. He doesn't need any water though, he'll be okay. So if you're going to put him in your basement, and your basement's going to flood, don't put him on the ground. It is okay to hang these things vertically on the wall. Like this, hanging on the wall. It's not an issue. So that's all I got for you on this one. Stay tuned. I'm going to do a video on what I would do as a dealer mechanic if you brought this machine in. We'll hook it up to a computer. There's a series of tests we can go through. And there's also some other 3-year recommendations that Husqvarna makes for things that need to be checked. So that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. Later.